My daughter suffered a head injury in Bangkok. At 2:17 a.m., the hospital's first question wasn't about her blood type, it was how I'd be paying. And then I found out my own mother had canceled her travel insurance to give the money to my sister for a condo deposit. It was 2:17 a.m. when the call came. The ringtone cut through the thick, humid air of my temporary hotel room in Bangkok like a knife. My phone lit up in the dark, the hospital's name flashing across the screen. I answered before the second ring. "Is this Clara Hayes?" "Yes." My voice cracked. "This is Dr. Mateo Ruiz from Chulalongkorn Hospital. Your sister, Lily Hayes, is in the emergency room. Head trauma. She's stable, but we need to begin immediate evaluation and treatment. Before we proceed, how will you be paying?" That last question hit me harder than the news itself. Not about her blood type. Not about allergies. Not even if I was her legal next of kin. Just, how will you be paying? She has travel insurance," I said quickly, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. A pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background, the faint beeping of medical equipment, and somewhere far off, the steady rhythm of rain against glass. "I'm afraid her policy is not active." I sat up in bed, the cheap mattress groaning under me. "What do you mean not active? She paid for it." I watched her email the confirmation before she left. "According to our records," the doctor said gently, "the insurance company declined coverage because the policy was canceled 6 months ago." That made no sense. My brain scrambled through every possible explanation: clerical error, credit card issue, some glitch in their system. Anything but what I was hearing. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong file," I insisted, already swinging my legs out of bed, feet hitting the cold tile floor. "There's no way her policy was canceled." A different voice came on the line, calm, measured, the kind of tone people use when they've given this news too many times. "This is Patricia from Global Alliance Insurance. I've reviewed the file. The policy was canceled by Diane Hayes. We have her signature on the termination request." The words didn't register at first. Diane Hayes. My mother. That's impossible," I said, my voice tightening. "Why would she?" "I can email you the scanned request if you'd like," Patricia offered, almost mechanically.
No.
"I mean, yes, send it. But there's been a mistake." My hands were slick now, phone slipping slightly in my grip. I could see Lily's face in my mind, the freckle under her right eye, the way she always pushed her hair back when she was nervous. And now she was lying in a foreign hospital bed under white, sterile light that made even the healthiest person look half dead, and the one thing standing between her and proper care was a piece of paper with my mother's signature on it. The rain outside pounded harder against the window, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pressure building in my chest. Somewhere beneath the sterile smell of antiseptic in my memory, I could already smell the familiar vanilla perfume my mother wore, and it made my stomach turn. 6 months earlier. If I close my eyes, I can still see that night as if it's been carved into glass, perfectly preserved, every reflection sharp enough to cut. We were at Mom's house, a place that always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something floral, like she wanted the scent to say everything is fine here. The dining table was set the way she liked, white linen napkins folded into neat triangles, wine glasses polished until they caught the chandelier light like tiny suns. The centerpiece was a ceramic bowl filled with fake fruit, pears and grapes painted just a little too shiny. Mom hated real fruit on the table because it looked messy. That was Mom. Tidy, curated, nothing out of place. Dinner was her famous rosemary chicken. The skin blistered to a golden crisp, the air heavy with garlic and thyme. I can still hear the faint crackle as she carved into it, the knife sliding through meat like it had been waiting all day for this exact moment. Lily sat across from me. Her hair was still damp from the shower, a few loose strands curling around her temples. She was wearing that faded blue cardigan she'd had since college, the one with a threadbare cuff she always rolled nervously between her fingers. Mom was mid-story, her favorite kind of story, one where she was the hero and someone else in the family was the hapless victim. Tonight, the starring role belonged to Lily and the Bali incident. Honestly, I don't know how you've made it this far without losing your passport or your head, Mom said, voice light but with that underlying edge. She laid a slice of chicken onto her plate with surgical precision. If it weren't for the hotel staff calling me, you'd still be trying to barter for flight home with seashells and smiley faces. The table filled with polite laughter. Megan's sharp and loud, mine softer, hesitant. Lily gave the smallest smile, the kind you put on when you know pushing back will only make it worse. She looked down at her plate, using her fork to nudge a carrot around in slow circles. You know, Mom continued, now picking up her wine glass, that's why I've been handling some of her paperwork. She's hopeless with deadlines. Bills pile up, renewals get missed. And with her traveling all the time, it's just safer if I take care of certain things for her. She said it so casually, like she was talking about watering someone's plants, not stepping into the middle of their financial life. Back then, I didn't think much of it. Mom had handled plenty of my paperwork in the past, tax forms when I was in my early 20s, my first apartment lease, even my student loan payments once or twice when I was abroad. That was her way of showing love, through control, dressed up as care. But that night, something in the air shifted. Maybe it was the way Lily shifted in her chair, crossing and uncrossing her legs. Or the way she smiled, but her eyes stayed flat. Don't worry, Mom added, setting her glass down. The stem gave a faint click against the wood. I'm just keeping things tidy for her. I remember leaning back, trying to make it light. As long as you're not selling her passport, I joked, twirling my fork. Megan grinned, dabbing at her lips with her napkin. Don't give Mom ideas, she chimed in, laughter spilling out too easily, like she was enjoying a private joke I wasn't in on. We all smiled then, 3 women smiling across the table at each other, steam rising from the chicken, the smell of rosemary wrapping around us. But Mom's smile, hers didn't reach her eyes. It was smaller, tighter. The kind of smile you give when you've already made a decision, and you're just waiting for everyone else to catch up. She picked up her knife again, focusing on carving the next slice, as if nothing had happened. Conversation drifted to Megan's new property listing, to the neighbor's overly ambitious garden, to Lily's next trip. I went along with it, filing that tiny flicker of discomfort away in a dusty corner of my mind. If I'd been paying attention, really paying attention, I might have seen it for what it was. That wasn't a mother talking about keeping her daughter safe. That was someone quietly moving pieces on a chessboard, setting up for a move no one else saw coming. And now, months later, with the rain in Bangkok rattling against the hospital windows and the antiseptic burn in my nose, I could see the truth so clearly it almost hurt. That night wasn't about protecting Lily. It was about preparing to control her. And we never saw it coming. I stepped out of the ICU waiting room, the harsh, white light bleeding into the dim corridor. My phone was already in my hand, my fingers cold and stiff around it. I scrolled until I found her name.
Mom.
She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice smooth and unhurried, like I'd interrupted her mid-cup of tea. Hello. Mom, I said, not bothering with hello. Why did you cancel Lily's insurance? A pause, 2 seconds, maybe 3, but long enough to make my skin prickle. Oh, you found out, she said finally, as if I'd just noticed a scratch on her car. I used the refund for something important. The words didn't make sense. Refund? Important? My pulse thudded in my ears. What could possibly be more important than her having coverage in case of, oh, I don't know, exactly this. Her sigh was quiet, almost patronizing. It's all in the family. I helped Megan with the down payment for Connor's condo. He's starting his first job next month. It seemed like the right thing to do. For a second, I couldn't speak. I stared at the green exit sign above the hallway door, trying to process whether I'd actually heard her correctly. You took away Lily's safety net so Megan's kid could have a nicer address? It's not like that, she said quickly, slipping into that reasonable tone that had shut me down since I was 12. Lily's a grown-up. She should have her own savings by now. She does, I snapped. But insurance isn't about savings. It's about not dying in a foreign hospital because your own mother decided you didn't need it. Clara, lower your voice, she murmured. You're emotional right now. I understand, but this. No, you don't understand. I cut in, my voice shaking. I'm standing in a hospital where Lily's lying in a bed with head trauma. They asked me how I'd be paying before they even told me if she was still conscious. And you made sure the answer was out of pocket. There was a sharp inhale on the other end, but no apology. Just silence. I pulled the phone from my ear and stared at the screen like it might crack in half under my grip. My chest felt tight, the air in the corridor too thin. I wanted to scream, to demand she fix this, but every second wasted was a second Lily didn't have. I shoved the phone back to my ear. Fine, I said, my voice clipped. I'll find the money myself. Then I hung up before she could say my name in that disappointed way that made me feel 12 again. The moment the line went dead, I was already moving, down the hall, past the vending machines, through the sliding glass doors where the humid Bangkok air hit me like a slap. My other hand was fishing my credit card for my wallet, my brain already running through the list of people I could call, favors I could beg. I didn't have time to be the hurt daughter. Right now, I had to be the one who kept Lily alive. The moment I hung up with my mother, I was already scrolling through my contacts. The list blurred as I flicked down, my thumb moving so fast it cramped. Names I hadn't spoken to in years flashed past. Old colleagues, neighbors from my first apartment building, the mother of a kid Lily used to babysit. I didn't have the luxury of pride anymore. The phone grew hot in my palm as call after call connected and ended, some with polite refusals, others with long silences that said more than words could. Clara, I wish I could help. But click. I'm sorry, things are tight right now. One client I hadn't worked with in 5 years told me she just paid her kids' tuition and couldn't spare a dime. Another sent a text instead of answering. Hope Lily's okay. Praying for her. Prayers weren't going to cover the hospital bill. Between calls, I swiped my credit card at the admissions desk, watching the little screen think for a second before flashing in cruel red letters, declined. I tried another card. Declined. Each rejection was like a slap, loud and humiliating, even though the clerk kept her face carefully neutral. I stepped away, leaning against the wall, feeling the weight of the humid air pressing in through the automatic doors. I dialed again. And again. My voice grew hoarse from explaining the same thing over and over. Accident, head injury, no insurance, urgent surgery. I was halfway through leaving a voicemail when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another wrong number or spam. Clara? This is Emily. I'm a friend of Lily's. We met at her birthday last year. Well, I met you too, briefly. I live in Sydney now. I remembered her. A warm smile, a lilting Australian accent, the one who'd brought Lily that vintage travel book. I heard what happened, she continued, her voice quick, almost breathless. I don't owe her anything, but I want her to live. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The knot in my throat was too tight. Emily, I've just wired you 5,000 AUD. It's not enough for everything I know, but it should help get things moving. You don't need to pay me back. Just tell her I said hi when she wakes up. I pressed a hand over my eyes, biting down hard to keep from crying in the middle of the admissions hall. Thank you, I said finally, my voice breaking. You have no idea what this means. I think I do, she replied softly. Then, before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I looked down at my phone, at the confirmation of funds received, and felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Small, fragile, but enough to make me straighten my back and start dialing again. The hospital clock was ticking. Every minute I spent chasing money was another minute Lily's chances shrank. And I refused to let my sister's life be the price of my mother's choices. Lily woke up 2 days later. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes still glassy from the medication, but she smiled at me when she realized where she was. It was the kind of smile you give when you're just relieved to see a familiar face, and I didn't have the heart to tell her yet how close she'd come to a different ending. I sat by her bed until visiting hours ended, my chair pulled so close our knees touched. She drifted in and out of sleep, and every time her hand loosened in mine, I felt my chest tighten again. That night, I went back to the hotel and called Greg Parker. Greg had been one of my dad's closest friends before Dad passed. A sharp mind, a dry sense of humor, and a reputation for not letting anyone, family or not, get away with something they shouldn't. If there was anyone I could trust to look into this, it was him. He picked up on the second ring. Clara? Been a long time. I wouldn't call if it wasn't serious, I said. It's about Lily. About Mom. I walked him through everything. Lily's accident, the canceled insurance, Mom's explanation. By the time I finished, there was a pause on the line, and when Greg spoke again, his voice had lost its warmth. Send me every document you have. Screenshots, emails, receipts. And, if you can, get a copy of the insurance file. 2 days later, Greg called back. His voice was flat, like a man holding back the kind of anger that makes you precise instead of loud. Clara, you're not going to like this. I already don't like any of it, I said. He sighed. Your mother filed a cancellation request 6 months ago. Signed it herself, with your name forged on the secondary authorization line. I froze in my hotel room, staring at the condensation sliding down the glass of the window. She forged my signature? Yes. And she requested the refund be transferred to her personal account. I've confirmed with the bank. It cleared within 48 hours. My stomach dropped, but Greg wasn't finished. There's more. I found emails between your mother and Megan. Subject line. Keeping money in the family. In them, they discussed canceling the policy before Lily's next trip, so they could use the funds for Connor's condo down payment. Megan even sent your mom a screenshot of the listing with a caption, "This will be worth it." I pressed my fingers into my eyes until I saw stars. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. They talked about this like it was a strategy. It was, Greg said. Then his tone sharpened. You realize this isn't just unethical, it's fraud. Forgery. Misappropriation of funds. I lowered my hand and stared at the patterned carpet under my feet. The shock was still there, but under it, something hotter was starting to burn. Then let's treat it like fraud. Greg didn't hesitate. Good. I'll draft a notice of intent to sue. But you need to understand, once we start, there's no pulling back. They'll fight it. They'll try to make you the villain. I almost laughed. They already have. This time, I'm just going to give them a better story to tell. Greg chuckled once, short and humorless. All right, Clara. Let's go to war. And in that moment, with Lily still hooked up to machines and my mother's voice still echoing in my head, I felt something shift. I wasn't just fighting for repayment. I was fighting to make sure they never had the chance to gamble with her life, or mine again. I didn't tell Greg I was going. Some battles you walk into with counsel. Some you walk into with nothing but truth and the kind of anger that makes your hands steady instead of shaky. The late afternoon sun was bleeding into the street when I pulled up in front of my mother's house. The driveway was empty except for Megan's silver SUV, its hood still ticking from the drive. The front door was ajar. Inside, the murmur of the television drifted through the hallway, a canned laugh track riding on top of the faint smell of vanilla candles. It was the same scent from my childhood, comforting once, now almost cloying, like perfume hiding rot. I stepped inside. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I crossed into the living room. Diane was on the couch, her feet tucked neatly under her, remote in hand as if the last week hadn't happened. Megan sat in the armchair, scrolling on her phone, her nails painted the same shade of coral as the condo brochure I'd seen in the emails. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. That somehow was worse. I set the folder down on the coffee table, hard enough for the sound to cut through the sitcom laughter. You gambled with her life for a down payment, I said. My voice was calm, too calm. Diane glanced at the folder, but didn't reach for it. Don't be dramatic. She's fine. There it was. That wall of dismissal she'd built my whole life. The kind that reduced any catastrophe to an overreaction if it inconvenienced her. Behind me, the front door creaked again. Clara? It was Lily's voice, smaller than usual, unsure. She'd insisted on coming when she found out where I was going. She stepped up beside me, one hand still resting lightly against her abdomen as though the hospital band might still be there. Her voice shook, but she didn't lower it. I could have died. The room seemed to contract around her words. Diane's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Megan looked up from her phone for a fraction of a second before turning her head away, eyes fixed on the muted light from the window. I leaned forward, pushing the folder closer to Diane. The copies of the forged signatures, the bank transfers, the emails, every betrayal neatly paperclipped. This isn't going away. You don't get to call this a misunderstanding. You signed my name. You canceled her policy. And you handed the money to Megan for a condo she could have saved for herself. Megan's head snapped toward me. You have no idea what it's like. I cut her off. I have every idea. I know exactly what it's like to have to save your own skin while the people who should protect you take from you instead. Diane reached for the folder then stopped, as if the paper might burn her fingers. This is family business, she said, quieter now but no less defiant. I straightened.
No.
This is legal business. And soon it'll be public business. For the first time since I'd walked in, I saw something crack in her expression. Not remorse, but calculation. I didn't wait for her to recover. I took Lily's hand and turned toward the door. The sound of our footsteps echoed in the hallway, the vanilla scent trailing after us like a ghost of something long dead. We stepped outside into the cold evening air, and I felt Lily's grip tighten. She didn't have to say anything. We both knew the fight was only just beginning. Greg didn't waste a second. The morning after our confrontation with Diane, he already had the preliminary paperwork in my inbox. Civil suit for fraud. Demand for restitution. Request for punitive damages. This isn't going to be a long, drawn-out fight, he told me. They left fingerprints all over this mess. And he was right. The case moved like a stone rolling downhill. Evidence stacked up with terrifying simplicity. The forged signature on the cancellation form, the time-stamped emails between Diane and Megan, the bank transfers that looked like they'd been pulled straight from a how-to guide for getting caught. The day of the hearing was one of those humid summer mornings where the sky feels like it's pressing down on you. The courthouse steps were already crowded with reporters by the time we arrived. Their cameras clicked relentlessly, each flash feeling like a small, sharp judgment. Diane appeared first. She was wearing a navy dress I recognized from Christmas 2 years ago, only now it was rumpled, like it had been pulled from the back of a closet in a rush. The crisp, curated version of her I'd known all my life was gone. She held her purse close to her side, knuckles white around the strap, her gaze flitting anywhere but the cameras. Her perfume, the same vanilla blend she'd always worn, lingered faintly in the air, but mixed with the smell of sweat and August heat, it felt sour. Like the illusion of her control had spoiled. Megan followed a few paces behind, her oversized sunglasses covering most of her face.
She didn't speak.
Didn't glance at me. Didn't look at Lily, who stood tall beside me, her chin lifted in a way I'd never seen before. Megan's lips were pressed into a hard, thin line, her heels clicking faster as she descended the courthouse steps. When the ruling came, it was swift and without hesitation. Full restitution of the insurance payout, plus additional penalties for fraud and falsification of documents. A formal notation in the court record. Their actions were not a misunderstanding, not a family dispute. They were crimes. The wire transfer cleared 3 days later. I didn't even have to ask Lily what she planned to do. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, her hair pulled into a messy bun, drafting the mission statement for her new project, a small fund for travelers who'd been stranded or betrayed, sometimes by strangers, sometimes, tragically, by their own families. The first grant she approved was for a young woman in Malaysia, left behind in a hotel lobby after her uncle vanished with her passport and cash. Lily didn't just send money. She wrote her a personal note. You're not alone. You matter more than the people who left you behind. Watching her type those words, I realized that what we'd taken back from Diane and Megan was more than money. It was the power to choose what kind of legacy we'd leave. And in that moment, I understood something I wish I'd learned years ago. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you've drawn a line, one they'll never be able to cross again. When people ask me now what happened, I tell them the truth in one sentence. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Sometimes, the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. If this story touched you, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every share, every message helps this channel grow, and more importantly, it's how we stand together against betrayal and injustice, even when it comes from the very people who should protect us.